Initiating moisture.
Hi, and welcome to the latest installment in the Sodden Cinematic Universe. Today I'll be analyzing the moisture content in the new Thor movie called Thor Ragnarok. Full disclosure, I think the previous two Thor movies were stinky ass. I think they are by far the weakest in the MCU, but I still went into this movie with high expectations and wasn't let down. The movie trailers try to sell you that this is a different approach to a standard superhero action flick, and for the most part, they're right. This is a pretty different approach. It's a more comedic approach, a different visual style for the most part as well. And it is pretty different from most of the others until it gets to the end, then it kind of falls into cliches and what you'd expect, but it does it well enough where that's not a big complaint. This movie's about 80% great, 10% what we've seen a million times, and 100% reason to remember the name. It is a really fun movie to watch, especially when it comes to comedy. There was a lot of comic bits throughout this entire movie, and they did it surprisingly well. I've talked about this before, but I'm not one to laugh out loud during comedy movies or anything like that. Occasionally I'll blow a little light load out of my nose during a scene or something, but for the most part, I find modern comedy movies to be about as enjoyable as watching your beloved cat get run over by a fucking steamroller. However, this movie actually surprised me with how decently the comedy was executed here. I'm not saying I was laughing out loud, having a hoot and a holler the whole time, rolling down the aisle, pissing my trousers, laughing or anything like that. But it actually got me giggling quite a bit. There was one character they introduced here who's perhaps one of my favorite in the entire MCU, called Korg. I thought Korg was just so fucking great. He was a purely comic relief character who did comic relief really well. And the comedy wasn't the only surprisingly good element here. The visuals were a bit different to what you're accustomed to seeing in modern superhero movies, and really modern movies in general, since everything has this trend of trying to be super dark and gritty and shit. This movie was very colorful, and it had a different style than most other MCU movies, especially one that stood out to me is during a flashback where Valkyries had a showdown with the main antagonist. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The whole movie just looked really great and very different from most of the other ones, in my personal opinion. Now, the story isn't super strong, but it's not weak either. It's just predictable, and that's not a big complaint or anything. It's a fucking superhero movie. You can't expect it to reinvent the condom with some type of groundbreaking story. It's a very decent story, and it's told very well, and it's the first standalone MCU movie that I feel will have an actual impact on the MCU universe as a whole. Whereas other MCU standalone films like Iron Man 3 don't feel like they have any weight at all. You know, they have the main hero just go off on this side adventure that doesn't feel important. You know, he goes to the local diner where a madman selling chicken wings that are too spicy. The astoundingly high Scoville poses a threat to taste buds all over the world, overloading these taste buds. The hero stops him. Yippee, it was a fun adventure while it lasted. But it doesn't have any weight in that universe. This movie has a whole lot of shit that happens that I feel will have a huge impact on that universe, and it's fucking great. Now, the villain, I think, is a good villain. She didn't have a whole lot of screen time here to really develop, in my opinion, but she was played very well by Cate Blanchett, and I thought she was super cool. But they kind of shoehorned in an undead zombie army, which was kind of fucking lame, in my opinion. But overall, I think she could be a cool villain if we see her again and she's more fleshed out. And I might as well at least touch on it. Soundtrack's good. I never really have a whole lot to say about soundtrack unless it really wows me or really disappoints me and makes me feel bad about myself for even hearing that music. This movie ran that middle ground where it was good. It was, there was no complaints. It was fun to listen to. Let's go ahead and pop this shit into the moist meter here. I'm giving Thor Ragnarok an 85%. It was a genuinely fun movie to sit through. The entire audience loved it. All the comedy bits really hit pretty hard with the audience I was in, and it even got a little giggle out of me here and there. Korg had a one-liner that actually gave me a bit of a hoot, so that was a surprise since I don't typically laugh at movies, like I said earlier. And the whole movie was just a fun ride to go on, and it felt like it had a real weight in the MCU. Easily the best Thor movie, while the previous two Thor movies just ate shithole. This movie pounded shithole with a lot of fun in there. That was meant as a compliment, but I realize saying shithole in a positive way doesn't exactly convey the idea of something being good. So just know, the last two movies ate shit. This movie was serving out shit, and it was good shit. I enjoyed it. That's it. See ya.